right, Mark, welcome back to the show, dude. It's amazing. Today actually, there's been a few friends that I haven't spoken to in like a long time, like 6+ months, and I've been able to catch
Right.
up with a few people today, and it's been awesome. It's weird they all kind of got stacked on the same day, and it's been this interesting day of kind of reminiscing and catching up with good old friends.
I have a little bit of information you might not know that I know why that has happened today. Because
Hit
in
me with
case
it.
you did not know, today is National Unicorn Day.
It is. Is it really? And
Honest,
I
it,
don't.
it, it seriously is. It is Today is National Unicorn Day.
That is
Like I don't.
embarrassing that I don't even know that is. I'm gonna have to edit out this part and put it in like, oh, of course I
All
knew
right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I was because I pulled up the podcast about a half hour ago. And I'm pretending like I actually knew this. And my wife walked in and she looked, she goes, "Oh, did you know today?" I don't know how she knew, but she's like, "Did you know today's National Unicorn Day?" So I was like, this is great. I better not, this will give me something to start talking about. So there
That
you
is
go.
awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna have to drop in. I'm just gonna dub over my mouth. Yeah, just the
All
different
right.
different
Of course
answer
I do.
to it. So I want to start. We were just talking kind of offline about what are you interested in nowadays? What are you kind of passionate about? What are you studying, both personally and professionally? And and you spoke about something that's been really fascinating to me, and this idea of movements, this idea of virality, this idea of followings, this idea of like we're living in this really strange time where a lot of people, and I don't know the stats. I know the stats for like younger people, like high school and under, is crazy, but just in general, people
Mhm.
want to be content creators. They want to be influencers. It's I forget the stat. It's something like the top, if you know, top 3 out of 10 jobs that kids in high school and middle school want when they asked in the last year. Like the top three were basically influencer jobs. It was like a YouTuber,
All right.
influencer, Instagram, something. Um, so let's start there, even before diving into like what makes a movement, and some historical examples and stuff like that. But like, does that bother you? You said you have a kid going to college and growing up and entering kind of the real world, having to get a job. Does that scare you that there's like a lot of people nowadays seem to want to for their career kind of just be a creator? Like, I don't even know, like, not really create anything. Like I feel like we used to have, a lot of people wanted to grow up and they wanted to, be an astronaut. They wanted to be a doctor, right? They wanted to do things that like provided a real tangible benefit to society. And now we have a lot of people that kind of want to do something that, sure, there are benefits, right? I think there's plenty of people out there that are content creators who provide hope to people, inspiration, their, specific niches, and they can provide some benefit. But like, I've been going back and forth in my head, like, is this going to end terribly, terribly wrong? Or is this going to create this kind of new phase of civilization where everyone is important, everyone has a voice, and everyone has a following? I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on it.
So I think you have to dig a little deeper to kind of better understand why does somebody want to be a content creator. It's not like, they came, ever since I was a fetus, I like to write blog posts. Like I don't think that that's really the reason. I think when you dig in a little deeper, it comes down to this need to matter. Like I want to matter. I want to do something on a big scale. I want people to pay attention, because we've we're so used to like getting that little jolt of energy from the likes and from the from the comments and from like that instant feedback when I have something to say and everybody just jumps up and applauds in some way, shape, or form. For many of us older folk, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't get that until I was after out of college. But a lot of like younger kids today that are saying like, all right, well, what do I want to do? Like, how do I want to, how do I want to, see myself in the future? Um, that's how they kind of gauge, their level of importance. When I say something, are people paying attention? Are they listening? And how do I create more of that? How do I get more people to listen to what I have to say? My daughter is she's 17. She's going to college in August, which is scary, really, really scary. And she's on TikTok doing some stuff and having fun and her and her friends, and it's always just like real goofy stuff. But she created a TikTok a couple weeks ago that went viral, and I think it got somewhere around 50,000 or 100,000 likes and like 20,000 shares and like a whole bunch of comments, thousands of comments. And she's like 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 hysterical about it. Like she's fulfilled. Her life's purpose has been met. And then you look at what the video is about, and you're like, seriously, like this is what you have to. Like, it's not about the content. It's not about. It's about the everybody, people see me, and that's what's so important. So it's that I so when you say people want to be an influencer, like I think it's more about people just wanting to do something that matters on a grander scale than their immediate circle.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think diving that kind of layer deeper is why are people doing this? It is interesting. Philly went through this phase where the reality TV phase, where it was people kind of for a long time living vicariously through people, because most people realize like I'm never going to be famous. Like I'm never. It's the chances of me being a famous musician or actor or athlete, like something that required like a talent or a skill. Can't do it, so I'm going to do the
Sure.
next best thing, which is I'm going to kind of live through them. And now we're at this weird transition where the barrier has been lowered so that everybody can potentially be that thing, regardless of whether you have talent, regardless of whether you have
Right.
any skills, which is it's this weird thing I juggle with because it's so powerful and so amazing, right? I'm a big believer that if giving everyone equal opportunities, right? Everyone has the same opportunity today in 2021 to be successful, to be famous. Like you can start a business, you can do all these things with very, very little financial commitment and not a ton of time either. But then there's also this thing of like, should people do that? Right? Like just because everyone can do it, should everyone do it? And I don't know the answer to that. Like I don't know where we go as a society if everybody's a vast generalization, but a lot of people are seeking their primary fulfillment out of whether they can grow a following, whether people can like and comment and engage with social posts, instead of thinking about like what they're actually putting out into the world. And I catch myself doing this. I don't know if you catch yourself doing this, and I try to fight against it, but it's hard. It's instead of thinking about like I'm gonna share this thing because it's really interesting to me and I think it's really great content. The first thought is, will this be engaged with? Right? Before whether this is actually great content that I think
Right.
is valuable. It's well, is this really share worthy? Is it in a digestible format? Right? And that's I think it's a bad thing. Like I think that's a dangerous thing long term for us as people if we're filtering our thoughts and not putting like our true thoughts, our true feelings, our true like value, unfiltered kind of value out there. But instead it's a layers put over it before we put it out there because we want to maximize the chance it's going to be shared and engaged with.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You put out something, marketing related or ads related or something that's incredibly valuable that can like literally change somebody's life in terms of if they actually implemented that advice or took that and actually ran with it, and you'll get 4 likes or 5 likes or 10 likes or one comment, like minimal stuff. But if you post a fail video, you may get like 100,000 people and so we look at that from that perspective of like, well, okay, like what's going to get me the most attention versus really what's the most valuable. And the most valuable thing is not always the thing that's going to get the most attention
Yeah.
in many cases. So like like you said, everybody has that opportunity to be famous. Like we've redefined what the word famous means, and but should you like is your value better by sharing fail blogs or sharing marketing? So you might not be you might not be the next Kardashian, but you're going to do a lot more with something that maybe reaches a smaller amount of people, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's also the idea of speed, right? And that's changed dramatically over the last 10 years. You know, people that became famous over the last, over decades or centuries, that became famous authors, famous musicians, famous actors, athletes, all these things. It took them a really long period of time to get to that point, right? It took
Right.
lots and lots of fails, lots of, you look at like The Office, right? One of my favorite TV shows. Like there's a podcast that talked about the making of it and the history of it. Like all of the actors that were on that show were all failed. They had all failed tons of times, right? They were all on the verge of just quitting, going home, and going back to bartending or waiting tables, but they kept going and going and going, and then they got that big break. And even then, it took years for that show to catch on and become big. Now we live in this world where if I happen to catch the right thing at the right time, you have the opportunity almost overnight to become famous. Overnight, you're getting talked about on the big blogs, and big celebrities are talking about you. You're on the late night shows. And I think it's kind of changed people's view of like what it takes to become successful, what it takes to become famous. It's now like, I just got to put out one post instead of saying, well, no, you look at, something like Joe Rogan, for example. I mean, his podcast, he's the biggest podcast in the world, but if you look at how many episodes he's put out, he's in the thousands now. Like, he's been doing,
and he had a whole career well before.
Exactly.
Before, I mean, it's not like he's like an overnight success over the course of 25 years.
Yeah, he had a lot of clout going into it. He was early to the platform, early to the trend.
Yeah.
And even then still took hundreds of episodes to become like really big. And now he's in, I think episode 1800 or whatever it is. He's been doing it, 2 episodes, 3 episodes a week for years, which is just crazy. So share something there, because I want to change something.
So is is that a positive thing, or is that like also a negative thing? Like when you have somebody that has this idea in their head that, all I need is one blog post, or all I need is the right person to see me. If I can only get Kim Kardashian to retweet me, I'm going to be famous. Is that person going to end up giving up too soon and miss that chance of like really being famous, or somebody really seeing their true talent? Because they're searching for that overnight success. Like, have we created an environment where it's just really, really easy to give up? Because like if I don't get this, if I don't get the wood on the ball on the first swing, then I'm done. I'm out. Let me try something else.
Yeah, I think we've created, in my opinion, I got Hokey, my little Yorkie. She has this weird reverse sneeze thing. All of a sudden,
we have, my dog does that too. That's the Miss Piggy.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but it doesn't. It was way more terrifying for us until we found out that it's basically like a sneeze for them. All right. But yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's the culture of it's instant feedback, instant wins, and this belief that that's the way it's normalized, that's what it should be. And then I think it's also we live in a society now where it's become easy and acceptable to not really take a lot of personal responsibility. And so it's become a lot easier to give up and fail because you feel it less, right? Like I feel like when I was getting started, I'm sure when you were getting started, when something failed, even when I was a kid playing baseball, things like I took a lot more personal responsibility over it. It's me. Like I did something wrong. I messed up. I feel like today, 2021, we kind of live in a society now where it's like, I can blame a lot of other things. It's easier for me to blame people, institutions, organizations, circumstances out of my control. And that's made, I believe, easier for people to just give up because it's not really my fault. Like I didn't, I don't have a chance. Like it's because of this and this. So I have no chance of ever getting successful. So I'm just going to give up in the first place. And I think those two things combining are really dangerous because the truth is that it takes a really, really long time and a lot of work and a lot of at-bats to have that break. We just don't see the failures. We only see the Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musks. We don't see the thousands of people every day that are failing, but they keep going forward and forward and forward and eventually get to that point.
Look, when I always tell that story about how I got on Broadway before, my quote unquote previous life or whatever, I was a professional musician. I wanted to work on Broadway. And it took about a year and a half, almost 2 years of knocking on doors, showing up. And this is in 96. So the internet was pretty useless at that point. So I was going to the theaters, I was camping out, waiting for the musicians to come outside. I was following them around, sending them letters, sending them resumes, like hearing over and over again on a daily basis, you're too young, you're not good enough, you're not very well connected, your education was a waste of money. Like it was brutal. Like I was, and every night I would come home and I would debrief and go, okay, what could I have done differently? What could I do better? What did I miss? How can I reword it? How can I say it differently? Who can I talk to? And as opposed to now, I feel like it's a little, and even for me too, like this isn't just like a, all these damn kids kind of thing. It's like I find myself too, like, I don't know, I shared it on Facebook, I shared it on Twitter, and I'm fresh out of ideas, like that's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like you don't like because it's so easy to reach people. We've kind of we stopped thinking so far outside the box that we're willing to, show up and camp outside in front of the theater and follow somebody home, not in a creepy,
Creepy way.
you know
In
in
a
a
totally
creepy
legal
illegal
above
way,
board way.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but in an appropriate way. But you know what I mean, like really try to be creative with people. I mean, I wanted to get on somebody's radar with my company, and we couldn't get in touch with them. We couldn't get them to call back. It was a helicopter touring company in New York City. Couldn't get them to call back, and so what I did was I went out and I bought a remote control helicopter. And I had a sign made up with my phone number on it, and I gave it to the secretary, and she flew it around the office, and the owner called me. Like those are the kinds of things I think that really help people break through, because there's so much noise out there, and because it's we kind of tend to just look at the surface, and if we tweeted it, and if we Facebooked it, and that didn't work, then we don't know what to do next.
Yeah, I think there's definitely ironically, for how much content's being created on all these amazing platforms, I think there's also a lack of creativity happening, which
Yeah,
is interesting. I'm sure in certain pockets it's sparking certain people to leverage these interesting platforms in novel ways, and that's creating kind of new groups of celebrities and influencers. But in the masses, I feel like it's when things get really easy, it's easy to become kind of lazy with how you approach things, right? Well, I
sure.
tried these things, it didn't work, so I'm just gonna give up. What do you think about? I saw you had just signed up, so I'm curious from a social perspective. This
The-
this BitClout thing.
so
I have some
yeah,
mixed feelings on it. I'm just from a branding person, like I'm really curious.
um I actually like the idea of it. I think it's very interesting. I don't know how I feel about uh I don't know how I feel yet about like the monetary value of it, and like, do I really want to buy, interest in these different people? But at the same time, like it actually gives, it's almost like creating a stock market for talent and for people, for individuals, which I think is really cool. I also think that it gives like a true um, value to people that you couldn't get from, like, remember that site Clout that tried to define
Yeah,
like how
they
many
were big
Facebook
for a
friends you
little
had.
bit. Yeah, they were really early in
Yeah,
the
like how many
game.
Facebook friends you have and how many Twitter friends you have, and then we give you a number, and that's how influential you are.
Yeah,
And it was all smoke and mirrors, and it didn't really mean anything. I feel like this means a lot more because, if I really believe in you and your message and where you're going, and when I see a future in you, I can invest in that. And I think that that's where it's really cool. It puts you on like a plane with like, like a publicly traded company, which is just a really interesting prospect. I don't know where it goes. I don't know if there's any value or truth to it or realism to it, but I do like the concept of it,
yeah,
like so far from what I've seen.
yeah. I feel the same way. I've been on it for maybe like week and a half, 2 weeks, and it's a very. I'm more excited about it, not from the like. This is kind of the first use case, right? Because everything on the blockchain, it's just like this is a kind of open platform people can build on top of, right? This is kind of just the
Right.
first test case. This kind of Twitter clone. And so the actual platform as it is right now isn't that like exciting. But what's exciting
Right.
to me is the decentralization of social media, the decentralization of platforms. Because right now, I mean, you have 3-4 companies that control pretty much the entire world, right? It's like you have a handful of companies that are run by a handful of individuals that control everything from commerce to communication to the news and content. And so the ability to replicate these really great utilities, but do it in a way that nobody really owns it, right? It's kind of everyone is powering it, like the way SETI works, like the search for extraterrestrial life. It's the way that whole network has worked for a really long time. It's decentralized, so you can kind of loan out part of your computing power to help power the search for aliens, right? And that's it's a
Right.
cool thing, right? And you have this cool
Yeah.
background thing that happens, and it's a similar concept where we're all everyone kind of is powering it, but nobody really controls it and can shut things down. But yeah, I think the investing idea, as somebody that likes trading, likes investing, and likes finance, really fascinates me. The idea that everybody has like a market cap and everyone you can invest
Yeah.
in their growth, really cool. Um, the part of me that sees how much kind of mental health damage social media and vanity has done to like younger people, that part kind of scares me, right? It's the idea that I've seen what happens when just people put a tangible value on like followers and likes and comments. This
Right.
actually puts a real dollar value on like your worth, right? It's like
Right.
I could imagine the negative side of it, which is all of a sudden this gets mainstream and there's high schoolers and stuff, they'd all have it, and kids are like,
And
why
they're
is
not
this
worth
kid
that
worth?
much. Right.
And like I'm not, I can see some very dark things happening. So that part does worry me, and we'll see where it goes. It's either a very interesting social experiment that just fizzled out and explodes, or it's kind of the next step in the internet essentially. Um,
Well, I also think like, and this is really interesting for me, like what I got from it. I think I heard about it probably about a week or two ago. Somebody was talking about it, but then you caught my eye with it, and the reason that you did, probably partly because we had this scheduled, but also because um, you had posted that you invested $2,000 or something like that in your own personal coin, and now it's worth a lot more or a little more, whatever. I don't know, whatever that part. But the part that got me was that you invested in yourself. You publicly invested in yourself, and because this idea, like, if I'm not going to invest in myself, who's going to invest in me? And that to me made a statement about who you are, which I thought was really interesting because I saw you differently once I saw that. I was like, huh, okay. So like, he like, this is a guy that knows where he's going because he's willing to invest in himself, like, and you invest in yourself in other ways, I'm sure, but where it was like that kind of publicly said thing, like I'm willing to buy my own coins. Like, that's because I believe where I'm going. I know what I'm doing.
yeah,
And so that I thought was just really interesting. And then I started kind of poking around and seeing what other people are doing and what other people are buying and who else is buying their own coins, and just trying to kind of understand and kind of see how people see themselves and how people value themselves. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there that if you really can want to get in the weeds, you can start to pick people apart and understand how they see themselves.
yeah. I thought that was a neat part to me. It was like the ability, like you said, to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
It's like, because at the end of the day, if you want to build a career, you're expecting everyone else to invest in you, and if you're not willing to do it, I mean, this is the most pure way, because we talk about it in our ads and stuff all the time. It's like, hey, invest in yourself by investing in your education and
Of course.
courses and training and masterminds and stuff. But like, this is the most purest thing you can think of. It's like, I'm literally taking my money and I'm buying kind of my stock, and I'm betting
Right.
that it's going to be worth a lot more in the future. And that is a
Right.
very interesting concept.
It's like a company buying their
Buying
stock
back its
back.
stock.
It
Yep.
instantly makes you go like, ooh, Apple's rebuy, buy, they got a big chunk of money. They're buying their stock back. They must know something that we don't. And it's a very similar kind of feeling that I got with this. I was just like, that's kind of cool, actually. That tells me something.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I think there's a lot of upside to it. I think again though, it's there the the social part of it. I think can have some great ramifications, but also some really terrible ones. Even just like you think about how messed up people get and emotional they get when like a post doesn't get liked or engaged with. This
I
takes
know,
another
right?
level of like when people sell, like this
Now let's
happened to
put
me.
money to it, right?
Well, that, but
Right,
also people can sell, right? So,
right,
and your market cap goes down. So, like, I woke up and hey, this one person had bought $3,000, $5,000 worth, sold a bunch, and it's like that can also, I feel like, mess people. It's like, hey, people are investing in me now, people are selling me. It's like people
right.
don't believe in me
Your
anymore.
stock went down.
Stock
It's
went
yeah.
down, and that,
Like,
that
what did
can
I do? I
be
didn't do
that can
anything.
mess with people, right? I think
Sure.
it's this idea of like building people's value up and then like almost like shorting people.
Right.
Like it becomes the next GameStop. Everyone individual is like a GameStop stock. It's
Oh my, right,
people are heavily shorting it, and then there's this massive
right.
explosion. But yeah, it's interesting for me. I view it more as like going to Vegas, and it's all a lot of this stuff, a lot of, on the crypto side of things. I view it, it's like it's this is like gambling money. It's interesting. A lot of this technology being
Sure.
built's fun. Some of it I'm sure is going to be here for the long term. It's going to be revolutionary. Most of it's going to just fizzle out and bomb. And you take a little bit and you just invest in it, and it's the experience for me. It's like this is a fun experience, be part of something, and there's the upside of maybe makes a lot of money, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think like as a musician and artist and having grown up in like that world and so and being so underappreciated as many musicians are, um, I think it's just like it's another path towards putting yourself out there in a way that allows people to appreciate that art. Because at the end of the day, likes and comments are great, but it's a sign of something. But I know so many musicians that have great followings and side jobs because they can't afford to pay their rent.
yeah.
Um, and so to have other ways to kind of monetize that talent and is kind of an interesting concept too.
It definitely is. So let's transition this into movements. I think it's fitting. We're talking about kind of social followings and stuff. You seem like you've been kind of down the rabbit hole of why do certain companies take off, certain individuals, certain just movements in general, right? Catch steam and momentum, and then most fizzle out. And this has always fascinated me. I think, like, not in a weird way, but super interested in cults. Like, to
Yeah.
me, any documentary Larissa and I we watch, like all the different documentaries
I'm,
about it
I'm
and
right there
stuff.
with you. Yeah.
And and for me, it's as a human being and somebody that's in marketing and how the brain works, it is so fascinating to me. And I know, like, it sounds weird saying this because we're talking about humans' lives. There's been some terrible cults that have, people have lost their lives. Look at Jonestown and stuff. But like, how like an individual, right? Just like a regular dude or a regular woman is able to convince a dozen people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people, right? Like a Scientology. And I'll be very careful here. Like, this is just about what I've seen of Scientology. I'm not making personal judgments just based on
Sure.
going clear and stuff because I actually I know some people that are in the church there, but for just the sense of scale, right? Just building a massive religion in modern times, which is really interesting. But how individuals are able to do that, it's like Jim Jones. You look at these people like what is it like and I have some thoughts and ideas, but you've been something you've been diving into. Like, I'm curious to your thoughts about like what is it about these individuals and these movements and the on the other side the people that kind of jump into them that it causes this crazy momentum where people are willing to do anything.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think I think we all naturally have the desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And it just that's like inherent in every single one of us. No, like like there's very very few people that are just like, you know what, I'm just gonna live in this little shack by myself. I don't want anything to do with anybody. I'm gonna grow my own food, and I just just everybody leave me alone. As far as you're concerned, I don't exist.
And if you are, it's
Like
the
like
Unabomber. That's who basically did that. The
right.
Unabomber.
That's the result. But even then, you're looking for that's the person that's creating their own cult.
Yeah.
But it's I think that there's very few. We're inherently born with this desire for community, and so when you look at the like from the past to the present. Um, it when there was no internet, when there was when all this stuff wasn't available to us, it was just your community was your family, which if you think back in like in the 50s 60s 40s 50s 60s, a lot of families just lived within 2 or 3 blocks of each other. Like they all kind of congregated, and like I live here, my grandfather lives down the street, Uncle Mike lives down lives on the next block over, and everybody kind of congregated together. And so your community was literally your community. And then as the internet opens up this world to us now, like you can live on the other side of the planet and we could be having this conversation. And so all of a sudden things change, and so now it just becomes a lot easier to build, to find more like-minded people, kind of get tied into people that think like me, believe what I believe, and but we still have this desire to create a community around that. And so things, as we go, as things progress, as technology gets easier and bigger, we start getting more extreme. And so you can use that for good or you can use it for bad. It's not enough to be just part of this little community of people that go to church on Sundays. Now it's like, well, how do we make a difference? How do we really change things? You see something like Anonymous and how Anonymous was able to, you know, um, make this big dent in the world, for that period of time, and then all of a sudden Q took it to a whole nother level, and you just start to see
Did you watch that documentary,
what.
by the way? The
Yeah, I
HBO
just I
one?
just finished watching it
Yeah.
like 2 days ago, and it's just amazing how you know, regardless of whether you believe it or not, or anything like that, but like how you build people that are willing to, write off their family, live and die by the word of somebody else. And so that's how powerful building, a movement is. Now, at the same time, it doesn't have to always be something that hurts people. You have, certain movements like Charity Water that save lives that people swear by, that are more than just a nonprofit, but they're like it becomes like almost like a belief system. Like I'm willing to donate time, money, attention, whatever it is to help, this cause. That's more than a nonprofit. That really is a movement to change the world.
In the civil
How
rights
do we
movement, you
get
look at these other,
water?
yeah,
Yeah,
these mass,
right,
even bigger movements. People are willing to physically be hurt and arrested for a cause that's bigger than them. It's yeah,
right. And it's when you believe in something so strong, like you watch that documentary about Q, and whether you believe it or not, there is no question that those people that were showing up with the shirts and the signs and jumping up and down and willing to put their life on the line, like they believed it, like
all in.
as whether like they're all in. And just like somebody's all in on and you have to pay attention to that and and see it, and then go, kind of look at it and say, okay, well, how can we use this to do something good? How can you create that kind of influence in an area where you work, or where whether it's your own community, or whether it's your business, or whether it's just you personally, and what can you pull from that in order to turn it around and do something good with it? And so I've gone down that rabbit hole of just trying to kind of pick that apart and understand that that kind of human condition of that where we're just so in desperate need of wanting to be a part of that, part of something.
Yeah, the interesting with these bigger movements as well as I feel, especially when you think like the political movements, right? It's power breeds more power, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people don't stop. It's like these movements, once they get going, they very rarely, unless it's in the private sector, right? Unless you're talking like a movement for like a brand, like the Apple cult of Apple, right? Where
Right.
it's there's nothing beyond just being a super loyal customer. It's we get somebody to believe X, but that's not enough. We want them to expand into other belief systems and slowly kind of make it so every way they look at the world, every connection they have to the world is controlled in this sphere. And, you know, I wonder if there's, as somebody that's kind of been studying this and looking at it, the ability in 2021 to have a movement that brings people together, right? Like I feel like the a lot of the smartest people and the most successful people, it's a generalization again, but there's a lot of on both sides, if you're talking politically, that are using those skills to build movements that split, right? It's I have this viewpoint that's on this side, or I have this viewpoint on this side, and we're slowly getting to a point where it's no longer kind of okay to have different views, right? Like where I can believe on this issue, I can be on this side of the aisle. On this issue, I can be this side of the
Right.
aisle. It's like people are going all in, right? You look at Q and you look at the other side, kind of on the left. It's I am so all in that no matter what is said by somebody on the other that doesn't have my initial belief system, it could be the they could have the cure for cancer. They could have this equation that solves our climate crisis. They could have anything, but it's wrong. It's there's something about it that is flawed, that is wrong, that is malicious, and that's what I've been thinking a lot about is like how can we leverage the knowledge that people like you and I have from a persuasion perspective, from a building movements perspective, to bring people to the center. And I'll get your thoughts in a second, but just the struggle I have with it is that part of what makes these movements really compelling is that you're able to have an enemy, right? And you look at a lot of like the cults and stuff, and you look at how they got started, and you look at Jim Jones and people like that, and part of their initial pitch to people is that your family and your friends and these people are actually, because they don't want you to have this, they're actually your enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an enemy, it's easy to now pick sides, right? When you don't have somebody that's a clear enemy and it's just about like, let's all just kind of work together. Let's all like, be together. It becomes a lot harder to sell that, right? That's why like once Reagan took away kind of the fairness doctrine in broadcasting and news, it used to be before Reagan was if you were a news show, you had to basically present both sides, right? You couldn't just
Right.
like present opinion. It had to be, here's the news story and here's a fair and balanced kind of
Right.
discussion of
You
it.
make up your own, you make up your mind.
And since then, it's now we have news stations, which are entertainment companies basically, and the ratings have
Yeah.
skyrocketed. And if you listen to like Matt Taibbi or people that wrote like Hate Inc., which is a great book, they figure out the formula, which is if I make my viewer angry at somebody else and turn it into a kind of battle every time, they are going to be more engaged. They're going to be more passionate. They're going to kind of, it's like a Chinese finger trap. It's like they're going to come in deeper and deep. They try to pull away a little bit, but they get sucked back in further. I'm curious, like at a high level, if you think there is a possibility going forward to build a kind of positive neutral move. I don't know what you call it, but a movement that actually brings more people together, or if it's the kind of the science of it and the kind of neuroscience of it is too difficult if you don't have those things to use, those tools to use.
Yeah, well, and I think it's creating that anger and it's also creating fear.
Yeah.
So if I create something for you to be afraid of, and I position myself as a safe place, and you can do that with anything. I mean, you can do that with marketing, or you can do that with politics or religion or whatever. If I make you afraid of whatever's across the street, you're going to come over here and huddle next to me, and so I'm going to keep you safe. And so in order to really build something that people embrace to that level that you're talking about, it has to it stems from that fear and that anger and that hatred and all that other stuff. Like there's got to be a common enemy. If there's no common enemy, you don't have movement, because what are we all gathering
What's the
against?
point?
Yeah, well, like, what are we here for? We're here to all right, so it's like there's got to be a common enemy, and that common enemy can be something like this country doesn't have water, so let's all come together and let's fight this illness or the sickness or dehydration or whatever it is. um the challenge is that when you think about, like, hey, can't we all just get along? Like, that's what my grandfather used to always say, can we all just get along? um the problem with that is that there's nothing to really fight against when we're all getting along, and eventually somebody in that group is going to stand up and say, hey, the guy that's supposed to keep us safe, I don't think he's really keeping us safe. I think we need to go over here because I think he might be taken from us. And then now all of a sudden you have a movement built against the movement that you've created for this pot. Like, there's always going to be somebody saying, I don't think so. Like you have like issues like human trafficking, which is I mean, that seems like a no-brainer. I feel like we should all 100%
Yeah.
of the entire population should be against that without any asterisks. Like like
Yeah. Just
there's
fact.
like no question, but there are people out there going like, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what is there to talk about? There's nothing to talk about. So there will always be somebody that'll that I think will be against whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now that can weaken your movement, or that can actually strengthen it, because in that you have somebody or something to point towards and say, like, do we really want to be like that guy? or do we want, or like that should pull us together? That gives us, that's living proof that there is that common enemy that we have to fight. And so I think that it works in your benefit when you're clear on who that common enemy is and how to, and how to leverage it. But I don't think that there's ever, something like that we can all just get behind. I might have, naively thought of that, thought that maybe it was possible 20 years ago. But when you see, like, there is not a single thing that I could think of that everybody just gets along on, like,
Or agrees on.
like, or
I think
agrees on, right?
that's the crazy thing, right? Is we live in this world now where things that you would assume 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, were just like facts, right? Just like, this is
Yeah.
just like the sun is in the sky, right? And that sun is in space. Like things that pretty much you walk
The
anybody on the
Earth
street,
is round. Like,
they're going to say that. But it's
right.
not, but it's now there's, I could say that. I'm sure there's people out there that believe, actually that, that sun you see is not actually, we're not actually orbiting. It's actually a fixed light above our dome, our glass dome. And I try to be, optimistic, but I feel like the more I kind of study this
Right.
stuff, it's very hard to believe that you can ever bring people together when if the starting point in terms of just facts and science, things like that, are not agreed on, right? If you're trying to get into a discussion and use persuasion or anything like that, if the starting point is different, it's how can you do you can't, because there's always, if depending on what side you're on, there's always the fallback of, well, I just don't agree. I just
Right.
your starting point is factually inaccurate. I don't agree with it. It's not real. Therefore, all the things you just shared are based on a lie, and therefore you're a liar and you're lying, and it's wild. And it's
Right.
what's even more wild is how selective, and we don't have to go on too far in this rabbit hole, but like how selective the people that control the information have been with what facts and lies and things are allowed to continue to be spread and what isn't, right? So there's been this big push over the last year, and this is just purely from an objective apolitical standpoint. Like I share this in every episode I do. Like, I'm not a really political person. I have a pretty wide range of viewpoints on, social issues, conservative issues. Like, I'm not one side or the other. I'm not registered as a political party. But like, you look at how much effort has been put into stopping the spread of certain information over the last year on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter,
Hmm.
putting labels on things and stuff, which is fine. But then you still have like, and maybe it's wrong today. Maybe I got to go check. But like, I can still go to YouTube and I can go to the rabbit hole of the flat Earth. Like how,
Hmm.
like it's either got to be, we need to step on all fake information, like anything that's scientifically proven that this is just wrong. Like
Right.
we've gone to space. Like these things are just not debatable anymore. But there's tons of videos out, like really well filmed videos out there that are very compelling. And if you're on the fence and if you're into conspiracies and stuff, like it is easy to fall down that rabbit hole
Yeah.
and 10 hours in be like, wait, is maybe all this stuff I've been thinking is actually wrong. Maybe it is flat. Like we live in this weird place where, again, a handful of individuals essentially control the information, control what we see, what we don't see. And I feel like until we get to a place where we've either universally agreed that this stuff over here is just been proven by people of all, backgrounds and belief systems, this is just inaccurate, and we're just no longer going to let this exist. And then this stuff over here is now the starting point. Everyone's starting from the same facts. Until we ever do that, like I don't know how you get that synergy, right? How do you get people to be in agreement on things, on big issues at least?
Well, you see, I don't even think you need agreement. Like, I think that it starts with being able to listen and respect. So,
Yep.
like,
Clarify
you don't
acceptance.
have to, yeah, like you don't even have to remove all the fake flat Earth information. Like, if you're into that kind of thing, like the flat Earth thing, then like, okay, I guess look into it, and and go, dig deeper into that, and I don't know, whatever you're gonna do with it. But it's when somebody, says, not only is that wrong, but I want it removed, and and I don't even want to hear it, and I don't even want to think about it, I don't even talk
Yep.
about it, or that flat earther says there's no way that the earth is round, and like, here's a picture of it, and like, nope, still won't even, I can, like I refuse to even look at it. Like that's where I think that it becomes an issue. So like you have people that are not being heard, not being listened to, respected, or whatever, and so their opinions get, or their thoughts, or their beliefs get more extreme, and so because you have to get more extreme to be heard, and so eventually, next thing you know, they're standing on the roof screaming as loud as they can, whatever obscenity that they can, just so somebody will pay attention, and then all of a sudden, a couple of people go, "Hey, that kind of makes sense." Let's hear what he has to say. And so now, and then now you have
Yep.
three people that are screaming this really crazy stuff, and then it just kind of escalates and escalates. And now if they're like, look, they got 10 people, there must be something to this, and that's how it gets extreme. Now, if we just listened to in the beginning, and if we were just able to have a conversation, things would be a lot different. And whether it's politics, or whether it's science, or whether it's religion, like we just will not tolerate somebody that doesn't believe what we believe,
And that's
and that's what creates all this other
yeah,
stuff.
that's the greatest irony. Like that is the thing that I don't understand how the people making these decisions don't understand this. Is like before I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like I think that removing any content, especially on social media, like unless it's just illegal content, right? Obviously we have like a base acceptance of like what is illegal and stuff, um but yeah, I think once you go down the rabbit hole of deciding what information is wrong and right, if it's all legal, if it's just me sharing my beliefs that I think, like if I went out there today and said, I think this white fence I'm looking at that in my backyard is actually black, and posting that, like if I want to post that and be crazy, like I can post that, right? There was the videos for a while, the dresses, like people said it's this color, right? It's
Right.
just people sharing their what they see it as their opinion. I think what's interesting and kind of terrifying is that this belief by the people that are removing the content and deciding this is so bad and so wrong, we need to remove it. They maybe this is wrong, but this is what I think they believe, that by doing that they're gonna smother it, right? If I I'm kind of cutting off the arm, right? The arm's got frostbite, and I'm cutting it off, and therefore I'm saving the body. In my opinion, just based, I think also on, I think data would support this as well, based on what's been happening. When you do that, all it does is causes people to entrench further, because now you're giving them an enemy, right? Now they're like, we
Right.
must be onto something, right? If the big
Yeah.
powers are removing us, it must be because we're onto something, and they don't want other people to be onto it, right? It just further fuels even the craziest conspiracies, and then other people start seeing it. And this is what's happening now, which is scary. Is you have a lot of relatively moderate people who are just continuing to see this happen week after week, month after month, just this person getting canceled, this content getting removed. And you're getting people that are just like, I'm just sick of this. Like it's gotten so crazy and so extreme. I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna go over to these people, because at least these people like are gonna listen to me, and I can talk and have a conversation and not have the
Right.
fear of saying the wrong thing and somebody diving into my a 15-year-old tweet that I did and posting that. Like I think
Right.
that is the reality, and I don't know why people that are on the side of doing it and kind of the power don't understand that they're just fueling this. Like they're causing more of a divide. They are causing more people to choose a side. And in my opinion, based on friends I have, people I talk to, people I know, like more people are choosing to go kind of further to the right than to the left right now,
Yeah.
because of this constant fear of like, I can't say anything but then if I'm silent, don't say anything, then I'm saying something. It's like it's a lose. We're in a world where it's kind of a lose lose,
Right.
and it's creating enemies. It's creating enemies for a lot of people that didn't exist. Like I think most people didn't need to have an enemy. They didn't have an enemy. They were just like, I'm coming about my life. But now it's like, Facebook's an enemy, right? The news is an enemy, and that's dangerous, because that, again, like we talked about, moves people to a movement, because now there's an enemy that I
Right.
need to fight against, right?
Well, think about it. So Donald Trump got bounced from Twitter because of so Twitter decided that his tweets were not appropriate or inciting violence or whatever,
Yep.
and whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. So he gets bounced. So what happens? Parler shows up, And Parler says, hey, we can fill that void. And so now you have this area, this space that's even more extreme than Twitter because it's more concentrated with people that have a similar belief, and it just starts spiraling out of control. So then Amazon says, well, we're going to take down your servers and we're going to knock that out. Like, so now we're in a holding pattern, like, but whatever is coming next is going to be more extreme than that.
Yeah.
And then if they take that away, it's gonna get more extreme than that. Like, it's just, and whether it's right or wrong is, in terms of what they have to say, is irrelevant. The fact is that it's that person that's saying, like, hey, listen to me, and like, you don't listen, all right, then I'm going to speak louder. And if you don't listen to that, then I'm going to start to scream. And if you don't listen to that, I'm going to start throwing rocks. And if you don't listen to that, then I'm going to start, like, it's just going to get more and more extreme until everybody says, hey, everybody stop for a second. And you just, and you allow it, to a point where it's like, okay, so you can say what you want on Twitter, and so if people want to listen to that, they can, but then you're also in an environment with other opinions, and so it's more diluted than when they start creating these other, these other areas where it just gets more and more extreme.
That's the big thing, right? The big thing is that when you remove people from where the kind of the town center is, right, where the forum is,
Right.
when you remove people from that and say you can't access anymore, they no longer have the opportunity to hear other sides, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know how you expect to change people unless
They're
you
not
can
going to
talk to
stop
people.
believing what they believe when you, like you've just made them right. You've just
Yes.
said, like, hey, all those things that you're saying, we don't want to hear it anymore, so you're gone. So that means, like, oh, okay, so basically everything that I've been saying is true,
Yeah.
is what you just told me by kicking me off.
And you have no exposure, right? It's like you think about the racism is still alive and well. There are still people that are racist of all races, right? But pretending they don't exist and saying we're just going to ban you and throw you over to this deep dark corner of the internet doesn't make them not be racist anymore. And like you said,
Right.
what's even more dangerous is that they're going to have kids and their kids are going to have kids. The only way to truly stop racism is to convince them, persuade them, show them that, hey, these people that you think are less than, like, this person's amazing. These people are amazing, right? And then
But
they teach their kids.
peacefully show
Peacefully.
them, and you have to peacefully show them and passively show them. Like, you can't sit them in a room and
No,
then just
we can't
say,
force it.
like you are going to stop being racist, otherwise you're not getting out of this room.
Yeah,
Like, it's not that. It's 20 years or
of
10 years or
exposure.
5 years of exposure and positive experience that you go, you know what? Maybe I had this thing wrong. Like, you have to decide on your own that you're wrong.
Yeah,
You're not going to be told that. So, and that's the case with anything, whether it's left or right, or black or white. Like, is irrelevant. Like, it's just, you have to. It's got to be an experiential thing. And how do you experience it when you've now been, booted from the community? You've been kicked out. So, we don't want to hear what you have to say, and you can't listen to what we have to say. And
yeah,
you're supposed to now cure yourself.
yeah. And it it doesn't work, right? It's Malcolm
Yeah.
Gladwell has a really good, if you Talking to Strangers, his latest book. He has a really good chapter about a guy who's incredibly racist. He's in his like late 60s, 70s, and this exposure that he has to a really helpful neighbor of a minority group that he's racist towards, and over time and over exposure, he also realized, like, why? Because most people that are, and again, these are generalizations, but like a lot of people who are racist, I'd imagine, don't necessarily have a specific reason to be, like, they can't point to something like, this person murdered my family. Like, this person robbed my house. This person did something where it was an actual event
Right.
that caused trauma and caused them to build these beliefs. It's my community, the people my family, people in my inner circle, they talk this way and they say these things. And so I believe these things because I grew up this way. Like I said, somebody telling you to stop being this way is not going to change it. You need
Right.
to realize, like, well, my crazy grandpa, what was he talking about? Like, now I have these friends in school. I watch these videos online. Like, this person's great. This person's awesome. Like, they're nothing like I've been told. But again, like, when you block people from being in the conversation, you prevent that from ever happening. And
Yeah.
all it does is create more radicalization, more fringe groups, and those groups grow and fester because now there's no chance. There's no chance for them to break that pattern.
Right.
Once you isolate a group, they're isolated for a long time until you try to bring them back into the fold, and then it's exponentially more difficult to do that. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
sad
mean,
to
look,
see.
it's a common enemy. It again, it comes down to creating that common enemy, that fear, that anger. When you think of politics, probably pre-Reagan, like there were, left and right sides, but there was a much deeper understanding and respect of each side. Like the other side wasn't really the enemy like it is now. Now it's just like, I don't care what you say. If you're on the opposite side of the fence as me, it's a no from me. I don't even want to hear it. Meanwhile, it's
Yeah,
like, well, last week I was just saying how that's a good idea, but now because it came out of your mouth, it's a terrible idea. Like that's what politics is.
yeah,
And it's insanity, because at the end of the day, it doesn't serve anybody. Because when you start to see everybody as an enemy, like everybody that has different color tie on is now becomes your enemy. You're not serving anybody. Like you're not able to listen. I'm similar to you in the sense that I've always been independent. I've always voted on on what people think, like what's important to you. Let's start there. And I voted Republican, I voted Democrat, and I always decide based on issues. That's gotten really hard now, because I like some of what they say, but I also like what some of they say, but you can't be that. Like it's really hard to find that middle ground nowadays.
yep. And it's ironic, and I got the little guy going out for a nap, so you got a little
That's
crying
fine.
background. But
Yeah.
the irony, I was thinking about this the other day. I forget I was talking to a friend. Like, could you imagine? You remember like back in the Fear Factor days, right? Fear Factor Joe Rogan, right? Like,
Yeah.
thinking back then when watching that show, and like this guy who's hosting the show, like that in like 15 years, this guy might be our greatest hope at like bringing peace together. It's
Right.
wild. Like, but I mean, his maybe not him specifically, but the format that he has built, where 3 hour, 2.5 hour conversations that are not edited,
Yeah.
not filtered, where he brings on whoever he's interested in talking to. So he's had
Right.
Ben Shapiro, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, right? Wide range, Stephen Crowder, different people. Like, we need more of that, like those types of media kind of
Yeah.
operations where it's just unedited, unfiltered, long
It's
form.
real.
Anybody can
It's
talk.
just real. Like you start to see that people are human beings, and it's not, you're not just this one thing or this other thing. And that to me is like, it's refreshing, because name like a news channel that like that's not entertainment nowadays.
You can't.
They're just looking for ratings, and it doesn't serve us. It doesn't, like at the end of the day, we're all fighting amongst ourselves because we've been kind of trained to do that. So
Yeah. Do you think? And I didn't. We're having such like a great conversation. I didn't realize that we're already like at an hour. But
oh
like, I want to just kind of a last kind of wrapping this up question. Do you think legacy media survive like 10 years from now? Do you think legacy media, at least in its current form, still exists? By legacy media, from watch, I mean like Fox, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, like the big media companies that have been around for a long time and are in a traditional format. Or do you think this kind of wave of new media of just Rogan podcasts and companies like the Daily Wire with Shapiro and stuff, like do they become the replacement? These more like niche focused content hubs.
I think there's always going to be a need for that traditional kind of media, and what concerns me is that the alternative, like whether it's Ben Shapiro and all that, like they tend to take a page from that playbook in terms of going, okay, this is my belief, and this is, for the most part, not all of them, but like, this is my belief, and I'm going to hammer that home, and approach it from a very one-sided conversation. Because it's hard to be the guy that's in the middle. Um, I don't see what needs to happen in order to get us to stop getting polarized. Basically, to stop polarizing ourselves. Basically, like unfortunately, what needs to happen is we need to find a new enemy so we can kind of pull together. 9/11 kind of created that, like where all of a sudden terrorism was a household word. when it wasn't, like we didn't talk about bin Laden or terrorists in the 80s, or at least not us personally, maybe amongst the government officials they did, but and then all of a sudden we had a common enemy we pulled together. Like, George Bush W was standing on the pile with a megaphone, and everybody was cheering. Like, it didn't matter whether you voted for him or not, you were rooting for him. That's because we found a new enemy to chase after. Um, Sadly, like, we need to find a new enemy. We need something else for us all to go, hey, everybody, while we're sitting here fighting amongst ourselves, look what's going on. We got to go,
But what's interesting is
we got
that
to pull together.
you would have thought that COVID would have been that thing, right? Like that should have
Sure, of
been.
course.
It
Like,
should have been the thing that this is a existential threat to all of us. Like we need
right.
to come together and fight it. But even that became highly partisan. It's
Yeah.
still highly partisan. Like it is. You look at how the media covered, down here in Florida, DeSantis versus Cuomo. You look at like it
Yeah.
is night and day. It's two different worlds, two different realities. And so I thought about that too. Like 9/11 was a moment that brought everyone together. Bush's approval rating was incredibly high. People were flying flags. We renamed French fries,
Yeah.
freedom fries. Like everyone was high fiving. Like it was,
Right.
we were hugging. It was
Yeah.
everyone's in together. And this happened, and I don't know if that proves that we're kind of past this point of no return, where there needs like we're too broken and there needs to be something even bigger that fixes it, or what? Because it's weird that it didn't cause a group to come together.
Well, I think because you had polarizing thoughts about it from the leadership perspective, so then it became like a polarizing. Like, my guy said that it was that it was fake news, while my guy said that this was going to kill us all. So, like, all
Correct.
right,
Yeah.
everybody get in line, and so so leadership turned it into a polarizing thing. Whereas, like it's not like W stood on the pile and said, hey, this didn't really happen, or this isn't
Correct.
really true, this isn't fake news, like, he's like, look, we got to go get these guys. Now, then it turned into something totally different when he went after, like the war turned into something, where he
Rather than
kind of lost
instructions
a
around the
lot of
same.
us.
Yeah. All of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, so then it got a little fuzzy, but that initial thing, like, when it happened, it pulled us all together fast. Like, I lived in Brooklyn at the time. I saw it from the window of my apartment, and it didn't matter whether we all got along or not. We all stood outside with the candles, holding hands, singing. Nobody asked whether they believe, who they voted for. So yeah, COVID should have been that thing. I agree, but I think that there was a missed opportunity there.
Yeah. There definitely was. So it's I guess to wrap it, we have I still want to stay optimistic, right? I still think there's always hope, right? There's always the opportunity that people
Oh,
can
there
come
has to
together,
be, right?
and you have to believe that. But it'll be a bumpy road and a tough road, especially with like technology, social media, just how easy it is to get polarized, how easy it is to go down your echo chamber. But hopefully those things that have built that can also build things that bring people together, right? They have the opportunity to do both.
Yeah.
And so,
Look, it's
yeah.
it's it's just a tool. Twitter is just a tool. Facebook is just a tool. Like, how do you plan on using it? And if enough people decide that they're going to use it for something positive, it's going to be a more positive tool.
Yeah.
And that'll drown out the more negative stuff. Like, it's just, like anything else. And and like, the irony is, like, maybe that becomes the common enemy. Maybe, all these platforms and like, all of a sudden everybody wakes up and realizes what some of these things are doing to us, and we all say enough. Maybe it's the Kardashians. I don't know. Like they become
It's
the
either
common enemy.
Facebook or the Kardashians become the common enemy to bring us all
That's
together.
right.
I think that's a good
Exactly.
place to a good place to wrap it. It's our future depends on coming together to battle one
To
of those two
battle
organizations.
the
One
common
of those
enemy
two
of the
entities.
Kardashians.
Oh man, it's so fun getting to catch up and chat. For people that want to learn more about what you got going on, your book, your services, LoudMouse, all that stuff, where can they go to check all that
Sure.
out?
Yeah, so probably the best place to go is marcensign.com. It's Mark with a C, MarCensign.com, or loudmouse.com.
Love it, dude. Well, it was awesome getting to catch up. Great chatting. Definitely have to do this again. And I feel you having to send your daughter off to college as I'm thinking 18 years down the road. So
You
I
had
can
to bring that up.
sympathize with you having to feel it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to twist the dagger a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, like I said, she was 6 months old, like a couple weeks ago, and now all of a sudden she's gonna be 18.
But it's definitely made me
Crazy.
appreciate what we have right now, even though it's very frustrating and challenging. It's how fast that can go by. So I gotta
Yeah, yeah, and
savor
I
every
couldn't be
minute.
more proud. So, yep, absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, let her know. Congratulations. That's amazing. And congratulations to you. And
Thank you.
we'll have you on again soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
You bet.
Bye.